这个贝尔居士来跟我们请法。好，欢迎大家一起来我们研究这个佛说无量寿经。好，我们现在稍微把荧幕提前okay.
So Dharma Master says, welcome everyone to come together to study the Sutra of the Buddha Speaks of Infinite Life. And thank you, the Apasika, for requesting the Dharma.
好，之前呢，我想我们先来念几声佛号，我们念，因为佛说无量寿经就是来说阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，因为这个无量寿经是大经，阿弥陀佛是阿弥陀经是小经，所以我们都是在来念南无阿弥陀佛，所以我们现在一起来念南无阿弥陀佛。
So before we begin, we will chant Amitabha Buddha's name because the Infinite Life Sutra is based on Amitabha Buddha. It is the longer sutra, and the Amitabha Sutra is the shorter sutra.
好，南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛南无阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛阿弥陀佛 阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛。阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛。Okay, very good. 我们念得非常开心，因为我们有我们的阿弥陀佛可以靠，我们就是要来依靠阿弥陀佛。我们以后要去阿弥陀佛极乐世界那里，也去那里修行，我们可以成佛的。
So we chant Amitabha Buddha's name with great joy because we rely on Amitabha Buddha. We will be reborn in the pure land of Amitabha, cultivate there, and in the future, we too ourselves can become Buddhas.
好，我们今天晚上来继续研究《佛说无量寿经》的经文，是在第62页跟中文62页，英文63页。
So tonight we will continue to study the Infinite Life Sutra, and we will start to read the sutra text in the Chinese is on page 62, the English is on page 63.
好，我们可以大家一起念中文，然后我们再念英文，在62页的最上面就是1、2、3、4、4行。
So we will recite, we will read aloud the sutra text in Chinese, and it's the 4 lines on page 62, the Chinese sutra text.
好共叹欲称其功德，自其然后得佛道时，普为十方诸佛菩萨，叹其光明，以如今也。佛言：我说无量寿佛，光明威神，巍巍殊妙，昼夜一劫，赏不能尽。好，英文也一样的，大家一起来念。
So for English, we will also read together. It's on the last line on page 60, let me see, 61, the last line to the top of the bottom of at the top of page 63. So the last line reads, their merit and virtue will be praised by gatherings of bodhisattvas and voice hearers. When they ultimately become Buddhas, the light will be praised by the Buddhas and the bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, just as I praise his light now. The Buddha said, if I were to describe the awe-inspiring power of the Buddha of infinite life's majestic and wondrous light, day and night for 1 kalpa, I could not finish.
OK， 好。我知道我们还有越南文的，我们有越南居士，好像6，他来翻越南给大家听越南文的。好，我们这个今天晚上呢，就是来讲这个我们知道上个礼拜四就是在讲说因为大家假如说有众生呢，日夜不断来称说佛号，随意所愿得生其国。这个就是假如说有众生他一天到晚就来称赞这个阿弥陀佛圣号，阿弥陀佛号在念佛，然后就是他会得到他他的愿望，然后可以升到西方极乐世界。 所以我们今天的经文呢，就是在继续讲往生极乐世界的那一些人呢，这个就是讲今天的经文。
Okay, so in addition to English translation, we also have Vietnamese translation, and the Vietnamese translator is Gilio. And so for last Thursday, it's the sutra text of last Thursday said that if living beings, upon hearing of the awe-inspiring power and meritorious virtue of his light, constantly offer praises day and night with complete sincerity, they will be reborn in his land according to their wishes. And so it says that if living beings are mindful of the Buddha and chant his name from morning to night, and so they will get the vow fulfilled by being born in the Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha. And today we continue with the sutra text.
他是讲就是升到这个极乐国的那一些人呢，会为诸菩萨声闻大众所共同来赞叹的，所以这个就是今天的开始。因为呢，最重要是这个来称赞这个阿弥陀佛这个功德。
And so for today's sutra text, it says the beings born in the Pure Land, they are the gatherings of bodhisattvas and voice hearers, and they gather together to praise the merit and virtue of the Buddha.
那这个所以这个去到阿弥陀佛那里以后，然后在那里修行，自习然后得佛道时，这个佛得道时就是成佛的时候啦，所以他去到那里最重要就是要能够来成佛，成佛道，然后成佛道时呢，他也是会普为十方诸佛菩萨来赞叹他的光明，也是像今天一样的。
And so for the beings who are being born in the Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha, there they cultivate to become Buddhas. And that is the most important point of awe, that we accomplish Buddhahood in the Pure Land. And after we have accomplished, when we have ultimately become Buddhas, our light will be praised by the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. And so that is today's sutra text.
所以呢，这个其实这个阿弥陀佛，其实他就是无量寿佛，这个他的光明呢，也是普照十方诸菩萨一样的诸菩萨众来赞叹这个无量寿佛的光明，所以这个无量寿佛，其实就是无量光，这个佛寿就是寿命啊，光就是光明啊，就是无量，因为无量寿佛它有12个如来的名称，yeah.
Okay, so actually Amitabha Buddha is the Buddha of limitless life. And so all the Bodhisattva and his life and light shone upon, pervasively shines upon all the Bodhisattvas, and all the Bodhisattvas together praise the Buddha of limitless life and limitless light. And actually this is one of the 12 names of the Buddha.
所以呢，这个释迦牟尼佛他自己又来讲出跟阿难讲，当然也是跟我们大家讲的。他说我说这个释迦牟尼说，我说无量寿佛他的这个光明威神呢，微微殊妙，这个就是最重要呢，因为他这个光明的威神最重要就是要给遭受到这个众生呢，他们就可以得到佛的光明来修行 最重要就是来成佛。
And so Shakyamuni Buddha told the Venerable Ananda, and when Shakyamuni Buddha said this, it also includes us too. And Shakyamuni Buddha said, if I were to describe the awe-inspiring power of the Buddha and the infinite light, majestic and wondrous light day and night, I could not finish. And so the light and the majestic light shines all upon living beings, so that we are gathered in his light and can cultivate and become Buddhas.
对，这个刚才Tammy他先讲了，其实这个经文也就是这样子讲，要说他的这个微妙功德呢，日日夜夜用这个一节的时间也讲不完的，所以这个是真的非常的殊胜呀。
And so I jumped to the next passage, which says that to praise the wondrous merit and virtue of the Buddha day and night, it's so wonderful that could not finish praising the wonder and majestic merit and virtue of Amitabha Buddha.
其实我们知道在以前我们有研究过这个法上比丘他因地的时候修行呢，他发了48大愿，这个48大愿当然是要度众生成佛道的。
And so actually before we have gone over the 48 vows of Amitabha Buddha when he was Bhikshu Dharma Treasury. And these 48 vows all lead living beings to become Buddhas.
所以这个48大愿中呢，里面有第12愿呢，它这个就是无量光愿，就是它它的这个光明遍照十方诸佛世界的愿。所以像它这个经文条文里面讲了，受我夺佛光明有限量的话呢，上至不照百千亿哪有他诸佛而国者呢不起正觉，所以哇，他这个光明是要照到百千万亿哪有他诸佛的世界的国土去的。
So the 12th vow speaks of the limitless light of Amitabha Buddha. Oh, sorry. I translated, but somehow it got muted, so I have to start over again. 对不起，法师，我要重复了，没有听，我翻译了，可是没有听见，我要再讲一次。
好
OK，
就是讲第12愿啊。就在第12愿，因为就是48愿大愿里面的第12愿呢，它是无量光愿，无量光的就是说它的光明遍照十方诸佛世界愿。像经文里面呢，就是说我夺佛的时候，光明假如说有限量，不能够达到百千亿哪有他诸佛国者，他不成正觉，就是他不成佛。其实他已经成佛了，已经世界了。
Okay, so in the 48 vows that we have studied before, the 12th vow speaks of Amitabha Buddha's light, how his light shines on all the Buddha's lands of the 10 directions. And so the 12th vow goes like this: when I become a Buddha, if my radiance has a limit and cannot illuminate at least hundreds of thousands of millions of nayutas of Buddha lands, I will not realize perfect enlightenment. And so you see how Amitabha Buddha's light really pervasively shines in all the 10 directions of the Buddha lands. And his vow says he will not realize enlightenment, but in fact, Amitabha Buddha has become a Buddha for 10 kalpas now.
还有第13愿呢，这个就是讲他这个寿命啊，跟所有的佛都是永久愿，就寿命永久愿，就是说往生的去的人呢，他寿命是无量的，所以这个就是说，12愿跟13愿两愿呢是无量寿跟无量光，所以这样合起来的话，它威神功德，是非常不可思议，最重要也是要来度化众生的。
And so the 13th vow speaks of limitless lifespan. And so the Buddha's lifespan is limitless. And beings who are born in his Buddha land also has a limitless lifespan. So together, the 12th and the 13th vow points to the limitless light and limitless life of Amitabha Buddha and how his merit and virtue is awe-inspiring. And that is how he can rescue all beings to cultivate.
所以呢，所以去到西方极乐世界，就是往生去那里阿弥陀佛极乐世界的呢。同时我们知道有2位助手，一个就是观世音菩萨，另外一个就是大势至菩萨。这个我们的这个佛殿的这个两边都有这个观音跟大势至菩萨，然后呢，我们称为西方三圣。那今天我们也就稍微来介绍这2位菩萨。
And so in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss, we know there are 2 bodhisattvas on the right and left of Amitabha Buddha who are Amitabha Buddha's helper, and that is Guanyin Bodhisattva and Great Strength Bodhisattva. And in Berkeley Buddhist Monastery's Buddha Hut, there are also these two bodhisattvas too. And so with Amitabha Buddha, with Guanyin Bodhisattva, and with Great Strength Bodhisattva, these are called the 3 sages of the West. And today, Dharma Master will introduce the 2 bodhisattvas by Amitabha Buddha's side.
所以在我们讲这个大慈大悲观世音菩萨呢，我们是今天依照这个水镜回天路，我们仙公上人他所讲出来的，我们来算来研究一下。
And so with regards to the greatly kind and greatly compassionate Guanyin Bodhisattva, Dharma Master will share our teacher, the Venerable Master Hua's explanation in the water mirror reflecting heaven. There is an explanation of Guanyin Bodhisattva.
观世音菩萨呢，我们知道《心经》里面其实是他也是观自在菩萨，观自在行深般若波罗蜜多时，所以这个是观自在菩萨，也另外一个名称，因为他在无量劫的时候呢，他已经成佛了，那时候是叫做正法明如来。
And so Guanyin Bodhisattva, we know that in the Heart Sutra is also known as Bodhisattva who contemplates at ease. So that this Bodhisattva has become a Buddha a long time ago by the name of thus come one light of proper Dharma.
那他这个就是因为他已经成佛，他是大悲愿力倒驾慈航再来我们娑婆世界，来救苦，行深救苦的。
And so Guanyin Bodhisattva has become a Buddha already, and he, based on the kind and compassionate great vows, the Bodhisattva has turned the boat around to come to the Saha world to save others who are in suffering, searching out the sounds.
所以呢，我们知道这个普门品里面有千处祈求千处应，苦海常作渡人舟。这个就是说你假看哪里有千处，当然就很多地方呢都希望来祈求观世音菩萨，他都会来出现的。来应这个众生的要求出现，所以呢，他常常在这个我们的苦海，这个娑婆世界这个苦海呢，来做这个渡人舟，就是说来救度众生，好像一个船里面呢，来划船来救度众生，众生沉到海底里面，赶快把他救起来，这样子。
So there's a phrase that says, prayers depart 1,000 hearts. In 1,000 hearts, the Bodhisattva answers. At all times, the Bodhisattva is like a boat that crosses people over the sea of suffering. And so it says in 1,000 places, that means that there are many, many places where living beings are suffering. And when they cry out seeking for help, the Bodhisattva would manifest to help cross the beings over, because the Saha world is full of suffering. And when living beings are drowning in the sea of suffering, the Bodhisattva is like a boat that crosses and rescues living beings out of the sea of suffering.
所以呢，观世音菩萨呢，在经典里面呢，他可以救七难，还有解三毒，应二求。这个在这个我们常常念诵里面呢，像这个七难呢，就是水灾，水难啊，火难啊，风难啊，枷锁难啊，黑风难啊，刀杖难啊。还有厌劫难，这个七难。
And we know that the Bodhisattva can extricate us from the seven difficulties, the counteract the three poisons, and respond to the two seekings. And so the seven difficulties or disasters are the disasters of water, fire, wind, lock and chains, black wind, and bandits or robbers. And then, did I get all seven? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
还有解三毒，我们知道三毒就是贪嗔痴嘛，这个三毒它可以解掉。你假如说这个很重的话，它就把你解到最后就没有了，解三毒。
And so the Bodhisattva can relieve the three poisons, that is great anger and delusion. And when we have a heavy amount of greed, anger, and delusion, the Bodhisattva will gradually help to relieve it and lighten it.
还有应二求呢，我知道我们很多的众生都希望说，成家以后能够有小孩子，所以你假如说要求男求女，这个他都会给你，你只要诚心跟他讲，他都会给你，说应二求。
By responding to the two kinds of seekings, that is seeking for a boy and seeking for a girl, as beings, when we have a family, we also want to have children. And when we seek for a boy or a girl, the Bodhisattva responds to our cry our seeking for a boy or a girl. And so this is how the Bodhisattva responds to two kinds of seeking.
所以观世音菩萨呢，他在出地的时候，出地就是欢喜地的时候，实地嘛，实地品，出地的时候呢，他就遇到千光王静住如来，这个是一个佛千光王静住佛，他来传授给他这个大悲神咒，就是大悲咒。我们知道，我们现在我们的 BBM 的每个礼拜每个月的月底，我们都有世界弟子呢来念大悲咒，我们给他做这个功德回向。我据我所刚才也算了一下，大概有400-500个在全世界各地方一起来念大悲咒，这个功德回向，所以这个就是教他这个大悲咒，念大悲咒这个，那教他了以后呢，他就从初地就超顿到这个八地了。
When Guanyin Bodhisattva was cultivating on the first ground, the ground of happiness, here the Bodhisattva met the Buddha, king of 1,000 lights who abides in stillness. And this Buddha transmitted the spiritual mantra of great compassion to Guanyin Bodhisattva. And so here at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, we have disciples from all over the world who dedicate themselves to reciting the Great Compassion Mantra. And at the end of each month, we would hold a dedication of merit toward the accumulation of the recitation. And Dharma Master said that around 400 to 500 disciples all around the world every month would recite the Great Compassion Mantra. And so when the Buddha, king of 1,000 lights who abides in stillness, taught Guanyin Bodhisattva the Great Compassion Mantra, Guanyin Bodhisattva jumped from the first ground to the 8th ground.
所以这个念大悲咒呢，当时他得到这个八地不动地的这个这个算八地菩萨以后呢，他就发了这个发誓言，就是他要，假如说未来众生呢，他未来能够利益众生呢，他就给我生千手千眼，所以我们也是叫做千手千眼观世音菩萨。
And when Guanyin Bodhisattva ascended from the first ground to the 8th ground, the great 8th ground is the ground of unmoving. And when Guanyin Bodhisattva ascended to the unmoving 8th ground, the Bodhisattva made the following vow that if any living beings who that if he can benefit any living beings in the future, may the Bodhisattva manifest 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. And so Guanyin Bodhisattva is also known as the Bodhisattva with 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes.
所以呢，他得到这个千手千眼观世音菩萨以后呢，他也就对佛来发誓，来跟这个佛讲呢，说假如说有众生呢，读诵这个大悲神咒，就是大悲咒呢，在现在生中呢，他一切所求，假如不能够得到满意的话呢，不得名为大悲心陀罗尼。所以这个就是说，为什么我们大家喜欢念佛，又喜欢来诵大悲咒，这个原因就是一样的。你只要有什么要求，你 诵大悲咒也是一样的，他也都会给你的。
And after that, Guan Yin Bodhisattva also made a vow in front of the Buddha. And the vow goes like this, that if any living being who recites and holds the spiritual mantra of great compassion shall fail to obtain whatever the person seeks in this present life, then it cannot be the dharani of the mind of great compassion. And that is why we like to recite the Buddha's name, but we also like to recite the Great Compassion Mantra, because any wish that we have, it will be fulfilled through the recitation of the Great Compassion Mantra.
所以呢，在这个五代的后梁的时代呢，有日本和尚呢，他非常喜欢这个观世音菩萨，所以他去给把观世音菩萨铜像呢要请回日本国去。那船呢到了这个普陀山呢，他就不走了，他就希望在这个他的像就在停在这个普陀山，所以这个普陀山呢就成为我们佛教的圣地。
And in the latter Liang of the Five Dynasties era, there was a Japanese monk who really liked Guan Yin Bodhisattva. And so he came to request a copper image of Guan Yin Bodhisattva to bring home to Japan. But the boat on the way to Japan, the boat stopped at Potola Mountain. And so Potola Mountain became a sacred place in Buddhism.
好，我们也常常听说苦海无边，回头是岸。众生为什么不回头？就是被名利还有爱情所迷。若能够看破，就能够放下，就能够获得自由。这个是我们仙公上人跟大家鼓励的，就是要我们能够看破放下，那就可以得到自在自由。
And there's us, we often hear of how the sea of suffering, the sea is full of suffering, but a turn of the head is the other shore. But why do living beings do not put everything down and return because of fame, benefit, and emotional love? And so the Venerable Master taught us to just put it down, see through to everything and put it down.
好，我们第二个就是西洋三圣的第二位就是大势至菩萨，他这个算他是算右胁侍者，就是说站在阿弥陀佛的右边，左边是观世音菩萨。
And so the next Bodhisattva that is part of the three sages of the West is Great Strength Bodhisattva. And Great Strength Bodhisattva stands by the right side of Amitabha Buddha. Guan Yin Bodhisattva is on the left side of Amitabha Buddha.
在《悲华经》里面呢有讲，就是说过去的转轮圣王，大太子是观世音菩萨，二太子是大势至菩萨，三太子是文殊师利菩萨，四太子是普贤菩萨。
In the Sutra of Compassionate Flower, it says that there was a wheel-turning king, and the firstborn prince was Guan Yin Bodhisattva. The second prince was Great Strength Bodhisattva. The third prince was Manjushri Bodhisattva, and the fourth prince is Universal Worthy Bodhisattva.
后来这个转轮圣王修行成佛，当然就是成阿弥陀佛，所以就是现在的西方世界阿弥陀佛。然后这个所以就变成说观世音菩萨这个大太子跟二太子， 然后就成为父亲的左右来协助的这个这个菩萨。
And after that, this wheel turning king cultivated and become a Buddha. Of course, this Buddha is Amitabha Buddha of the Western Pure Land. And so the two bodhisattvas became the the helpers of the father, which is Guanyin Bodhisattva on the left and Great Strength Bodhisattva on the right of Amitabha Buddha.
而且呢，在这个《观无量寿经》里面呢，记载这个大势至菩萨呢，他是用智慧光普照一切，来令众生离三途，就是地狱、恶鬼、畜生。因为他这样子，他有非常大的力量，所以称为大势至菩萨。
Also, in the Contemplating Infinite Life Sutra, it says that Great Strength Bodhisattva uses the light of wisdom to enable living beings to live the three paths of suffering. That is the path of hells, hungry ghosts, and animals. And so, with this great power and strength, that is known as Great Strength Bodhisattva.
所以这个大势至菩萨呢，因为他头顶上呢，它里面有一个宝顶，有一个宝瓶啊，它里面这个就是这个宝瓶是存的是智慧光，让这个智慧光呢普照世界一切众生，使所有的众生都能够脱离血光刀兵之灾。这样子的一个很大的力量。
And so on the crown of Great Strength Bodhisattva is a jewel vase, and this jewel vase contains wisdom light that that enables all living beings to be free from the suffering of bloody warfares. And so this light is very powerful.
也就是因为它有无上的这个力量呢，而且它是威势自在，就是它非常的这个威这个势力呢，所以大势至菩萨呢就被称为光明智慧第一，然后他所到的地方呢，大地都会震动，因为有这样子呢，所以他所到的地方就是来保护众生免受这个邪魔的这个所害。
And so Great Strength Bodhisattva is very awe-inspiring and majestic. And this Bodhisattva is foremost in wisdom and light. And wherever this Bodhisattva is, his light shines, and also the earth shakes. And with this, he enables living beings to be out of the harm of demons.
这个观世音菩萨跟大势至菩萨呢，是有不同的，因为大势至菩萨他头上的是一个宝瓶，那观世音菩萨的头上呢是一个化佛，他是头上呢他是有一个化佛的这个像，是两个不同的。
Guanyin Bodhisattva and Great Strength Bodhisattva, on the crown of their heads, there are different images. With Guanyin Bodhisattva, on the crown of this Bodhisattva's head, there is a transformation Buddha. As for Great Strength Bodhisattva, on this Bodhisattva's head, it has an image of a jewel vase.
那这个所以它这个宝瓶呢，大势至的宝瓶呢，它是装着就是 这个智慧光明。那这个本来呢，本来他这个其实还有有一个他刚开始的时候，他没有这个智慧光明的，他是听到这个阿弥陀佛跟他说呢，我们人最重要是要报父母恩啦，所以这个他听了以后呢，他就想说我要修行，我就是要来报父母恩，希望说能够来度父母出三界。
Actually, at first, the jewel vase on top on the crown of Great Strength Bodhisattva's head did not contain wisdom light. But Great Strength Bodhisattva heard the Amitabha said that when we cultivate, the most important point is to repay our parents' kindness. And so this Bodhisattva wanted to cultivate, to repay the kindness of our parents, to lead our parents out of the triple realm.
所以呢，所以当刚开始他要修行，就这样子把父母亲的这个骨头呢，把它放在这个瓶子里面，放在这个头上，这样子带着来修行，这样子，然后每天的修行呢，办到的这个功德，他都回向给他的父母亲，祈求他父母亲能够来得到。就得到就是来得佛国，然后超出三界这样子，这样子这个大势至菩萨他就天天这样子的来办道来修行。
And so at the beginning stages of the Bodhisattva's cultivation, having heard from Amitabha Buddha that it's important to repay the kindness of our parents, Great Strength Bodhisattva would put the ashes of his parents in the vase and put it on top of his head. And every day he would cultivate and transfer the merit and virtue for his parents to obtain the way to be born in the Buddha land, and so to get out of the triple world.
所以他这样子呢，他天天修行，就天天回向给他父母，功德回向给他父母，然后呢，他这样子的，久而久之呢，那个瓶子里面的父母亲的这个遗骨呢，就慢慢化成了光明，就化成了光明，所以他头上的这个瓶子呢，就变成了一个光明的宝瓶。
And so as time went by, each day the Bodhisattva would cultivate and dedicate merit and virtue toward the Bodhisattva's parents. And so gradually the light would, the ashes in the vase would transform into light. And now it become a jewel vase full of light.
所以呢，这个就是一个我们算蛮简单的来介绍大势至菩萨，所以大家可以假如说要详细研究，大家可以去读读我们圣空上人的这个水镜回天录，或者是大势至念佛圆通章，或者是佛说圣空上人还有讲过这个佛说大势至念佛圆通章，对，有一本大家可以去研究一下。
And so Dharma Master just briefly introduced Great Strength Bodhisattva. And if anyone wants to look more into detail about a Great Strength Bodhisattva, then we can go read more about it in Venerable Master explanation in the water mirror reflecting heaven. And also there is the chapter on Great Strength Bodhisattva's perfect penetration through mindfulness of the Buddha. And we can learn more about Great Strength Bodhisattva.
好 因为最重要，我们人生最重要是要修行，修行我们才有机会能够成道，也。像在我们的祖师大德里面，仙公上人的一个师父啊，仙公上人他出家的师父是常智大师。那我们也用这个机会来介绍一下常智大师。
And it's in our life, the most important thing is to cultivate, because when we cultivate, we have a chance to obtain the way. And so in the past, the greatly virtuous one and the patriots, there was one great virtuous one, which was our Venerable Master's teacher. Venerable Master Hua left home under Great Master Tangzi. And so Dharma Master also want to introduce Great Master Tangzhi to everyone today.
这个智公大师呢，就是常智大师呢，他是东北吉林双城县人。
So Great Master Tangzhi was from the twin province of Jilin from the northwest, 东北 east,
吉
the north
林省啊，
Jilin,
双城县。
twin province of Jilin.
好，他的属性呢，姓孟，孟子的孟。他虽然读书不是很多，但是他非常的忠厚老实。
And his surname was Meng, as in Mencius. And even though he was not very learned, he was not that educated, but he was very honest.
而且呢，他家里是以农为业，就是做农人啊，种田的。然后呢，他待人非常的和蔼可亲，就是待人非常好。
And Great Master Tangzhi was very loyal, loyal and honest, and his family was a farming family, and he treated everyone with courtesy and kindness, and his relation with people was very harmonious.
所以呢，他就是处事非常的公平，然后呢，他都是以吃亏为宗旨，吃亏就是说，他不去占人家便宜，他宁愿自己吃亏，这样子的，他做他的人生的一个宗主。
He was very fair in his dealings with people, and his motto for life was to take a loss. That is, he did not take advantage of people, and he himself rather take a loss. That was how he lived his life.
所以呢，他跟人家做工呢，然后他都是多做少拿工资，所以这样子呢，算舍己为人的一个非常伟大的精神。
When he worked for others, he would work more but took less pay. And this was how he let go of himself to benefit others. And this spirit was very great indeed.
所以呢，还有这个仙公上人提到说，在常人大师，就是说这个也是我们仙公上人的这个算师傅之一常人。常人大师呢，他守墓的时候呢，他就发心去那里来做护法，然后送3年的这个饭给这个常人大师。
And Venerable Master also mentioned that one of Venerable Master's teacher, Great Master Tang Ren. When Great Master Tang Ren was by his parents' graveside to undergo filial duty, Great Master Changzi also supported Great Master Tang Ren in his filial duty.
所以他这个3年之中呢，天天风雨无阻来送，像送饭啊这样子。那后面呢3年啊，然后这个常人大师呢，他吃了都是大部分都是吃生米面生的，这些呢也是这个常智大师所供给的。
So for 3 years, through rain, wind, and all kinds of weather, Great Master Chang Zhi would take the food to Great Master Tang Ren for all 3 years. And after 3 years, Great Master Tang Ren would eat raw grains. And this was also supplied by Great Master Chang Zi.
所以呢，这个常智大师呢，在40多岁的时候呢，他就受这个常人大师的这个启示，他就然后他就有这个想出家的这个念头。
And Great Master Chang Zi, in his around 40 in his 40s, Great Master Tang Ren encouraged him to leave home. So he has this thought of leaving home and become a monastic.
所以呢，他就回家跟他的妻子子女呢来说要这个出家的事情。他们的这个妻子子女呢，就抱了这个常智大师的腿呢，痛哭不放。
And so he went back home and told his wife and children of his aspiration to leave home. They cried and grabbed his legs and wouldn't let go.
所以呢，这个时候这个常智大师就讲你们若不放手呢，明天你就会抬着棺材向外走的。这个就是等于他以死来要出家，以死来抗议。你不答应，你就是只有我死了，你就把这个棺材往外面抬就对了，就这样子。
And so Great Master Changzi said, if you don't let go, tomorrow you will carry the coffin outside. That is, if they didn't agree for Great Master Changzi to leave home, then he would die, and then they would have to carry the coffin outside.
所以呢，他们全家的妻子子女呢就没有办法就这样子，所以他就出家了，然后他也去拜这个上修下隐老和尚为师，修隐老和尚为师父，来专修净土。
And so the whole family had no other recourse but to agree. And so Great Master Changzi did indeed left the home life and bowed to Great Master Xiu Yun, cultivation and cloud, as his teacher, and he concentrated on the Pure Land School of Cultivation.
所以呢，他就专门来修净土，就是持名佛号，然后呢，在张业明居士家中闭关，这个也是一个居士啦，很发心的，在家里面来闭关念佛，后来他明心见性了。
And Great Master Tangzu cultivated the Pure Land School of Mindfulness of the Buddha's name. And in the layman Apasaka Chan's house, he enters seclusion, and then he saw through to his nature. So I think that means he was enlightened.
对，就是明心见性，就是开悟了。然后，所以他出关了，在那闭关以后就出关，所以那时候呢，哇，开悟了，智慧解脱，出口成章。他没有什么读书，然后就讲的话都是都是成章的，然后辩才无碍，所以他讲起道理都是非常流利。没有什么任何的障碍，所以当时的这个知识分子呢，就非常的惊奇，有这样子的这个事情。
And after he was enlightened, he saw through his nature. He came out of his seclusion, and he obtained great eloquence without obstruction. Everything that came out of his mouth was like an eloquent composition. And before he was not very learned, but now he had great eloquence. And all the literati, the educated community, they were so surprised at this turn of events.
所以真的是非常大家来赞叹这一位长智大师，所以呢，他后来他也就是念佛来延续，就是来念佛往生西方极乐世界。
And everyone praised Great Master Tangzi, and he recited the Buddha's name and entered nirvana and was reborn in the Pure Land of ultimate bliss.
所以我们仙公上人也有给他的寄送啊，就是我想时间方面我们就不讲这个寄送了，我们再讲一个故事好了。这个故事就是一个释迦牟尼佛的前身，他也是为道修行来舍身的这个故事。
Venerable Master also composed a verse in praise of Great Master Tangzi, but because of the time limit, we will not go into this verse, and Dharma Master will proceed to the story of how Shakyamuni Buddha sacrificed himself to offer his flesh to an eagle.
所以呢，这个算在比喻经里面，比喻经里面的一个故事。这个故事里面呢，就是说这个我们要修行成佛，一定要做布施。布施的时候，像菩萨的布施，他都不惜自己的身心性命的，他都不惜的。
And this story comes from the Parable Sutra. It talks about how when we cultivate to become Buddhas, we should cultivate the act of giving. And when Bodhisattvas give, they have no concern over their life or their body.
这样子就是说，这个依照这个经文讲呢，好像这个以前呢，这个施比王以身来救护这个鸽子，来布施给这个鸽子，然后呢，天地呢就是sakara 就是地势，就是我们讲天宫啊，这个地势啊，他要来试探这个施比王。
So based on the sutra text, it says there was King Shipi, and he offered his flesh to the eagle, And the Lord Shaka, he wanted to come to test this king.
所以呢，他当然要试探他是不是他的志气很坚定呢？所以这个Shakra 就跟这个有一个结摩天的匕首结摩天，这个一个天算一个天王了，他说你来这鸽子，你化为鸽子，然后我来。这个夏卡来做老鹰啊，来追这个鸽子，追你。
So Lord Shaka wanted to test if King Shipi had a very solid resolve or not. So he told another heaven deity, a deity in the heaven, I think Vishwakarma, and said that, oh, you transform yourself into a pigeon and I will be the old eagle, and so I will chase after you.
所以呢，他就当然你这个鸽子呢，你就假装呢非常恐怖的，你就跟他跑到这个狮比王的这个手臂底下这样子藏在那里，然后呢，然后我很快的我就会来做这个老鹰来追你。
And so Lord Shaka told Vishwakarma, the heavenly being, that to transform into a pigeon and pretend to be very frightened and go to seek refuge under the arm of King Shipi, and then I will be the eagle to come chase after you.
所以这个鸽子在这个王的这个底下非常的站步，就非常在那里发抖啊。然后这个老鹰呢，它在这个树上呢，它就他看到这个事情，就跟这个王啊，国王施比王讲啊，你还我鸽子，
And so the pigeon was shivering with fright under King Sheepy's arm, and so the eagle was chasing after the pigeon and said to King Sheepy, "Return the pigeon to me."
所以这个他就是说这个鸽子是我要吃的，不是你的，所以呢这个你要还我这个鸽子。
And so the eagle said, "The pigeon is my meal for the day. It does not belong to you. So return the pigeon to me."
那这个国王讲呢，因为我已经有发愿了，我要救度一切众生，所以这个苦难呢，我不会给你，这个算我不会给你这个算鸽子给你吃这样子。
And so King Sheepy said, "I have a vow to save all living beings who are in distress, so I will not return this pigeon to you."
然后说，然后这个这个就他不给他吃，然后这个鸽子就就说，那你要用你的什么东西来滴给我吃这样子，那这个国王就是说你想要什么样的肉，他就是想说我要新鲜的肉。
And so because the king did not return the pigeon to the eagle said to the king, "What do you have in exchange for the meat that in exchange for the pigeon?" And so the king asked, "What kind of meat do you want?" The eagle said, "I want to eat fresh meat.
所以呢，他说好啊，你要新鲜的肉，那那我就可以给你，所以他就自己拿刀子来割自己的这个手臂上的肉，然后给这个老鹰。老鹰跟这国王讲，因为你这个肉给我啊，是可以，但是就是说你要跟这个鸽子的轻重要一样的。
And so the king said, okay, you want fresh meat? I will give you. And so with his knife, he cut off a part of the flesh of his shoulder to give to the eagle. And the eagle said, the flesh that you give me will have to be equal in weight to the pigeon.
所以就是说，至少都要相等的这个重量啊，这样子你不欺骗我，我也不欺骗你，所以就拿这个国王就拿这个秤来称这个自己的鸽子跟这个自己割下的这个肉，来称，然后这个鸽子转。每次呢，鸽子它都是比较重，所以这个国王的这个肉呢都是比较轻。
And so the eagle said, yes, the meat, the flesh that you offer has to be equal in weight. And so the king said, okay, you don't cheat me and I won't cheat you. So he took a scale to weigh both the flesh that he had cut off and the pigeon. And every time the pigeon weighed more than the flesh that the king had cut off.
所以呢，割了这个一个手割了完以后，两个手都全部都这个肉都割了，然后自己的这个是前胸的这个髋骨，这个也都割了，但是都还是这个钩子比较重。
And so he cut off one hand, two hands, and all his chest, and he kept cutting up, but still the pigeon weighed more than the flesh that he had cut off.
最后呢，真的就变成说他没有办法，他自己就跳上去称啊，干脆就连我这个整个的这个都来给鸽子这样子的肉来称，然后就所以他就整个就跳上去这个称上，然后也是一样的，这个时候呢，反正他就是说他不计较什么，反正他整个人都给了就对了。
So in the end, he had no other recourse. He himself jumped onto the scale, and so he offered his whole body to the eagle.
所以这个这个那个这时候呢，这个老鹰呢也是跟大王讲啊，这个事情啊，真的是非常难办的，你虽然你整个身体都来称给我，你还是不够，你还是还给我这个鸽子好了。
And so at this time, the eagle said to the king, this is quite hard to resolve. Even your whole person cannot cannot equal to the weight of the pigeon. So just return the pigeon to me, okay?
所以这个国王就跟这个夏克讲啊，你这个我总不给你我的这个鸽子，我不会给你的，几乎你来上升掉我的这个性命，我不会给你，所以我是为这个法来牺牲的，这个我都不后悔。
And so the king said to the eagle, I will never return the pigeon to me, even if you were I will never return the pigeon to you, even if you were to take my life. I will have no regret because I sacrificed my life for the Dharma.
对，他这个就是真的，他为了这个求佛道呢，来绝对呃不喜都没有任何的这个后悔的这个。这时候呢，诸天呢、天龙这些神呢，然后都这时候呢，夏卡他们都非常赞叹。这个来这个国王来救这个小鸽子的这个事情，所以这个事情呢，就有非常稀有，然后大地都震动。
And so it is true, for the sake of seeking the Buddha's way, the king had no regret whatsoever if he were even to sacrifice his life. And so at this time, all the heavenly beings, the dragons and spirits, all praised the king for his act of giving and sacrifice. And so the whole, the earth shook by his moved by the king's great act of saving the little pigeon.
所以呢，这个事情最后就演变了这个他为了要救度众生呢，他不惜牺牲一切，所以这个时候夏卡跟那个他变成鸽子的这个匕首，匕首什么摩天呢？那个然后就恢复天身了，就恢复他夏卡的身。然后呢，来跟变成说，哇，这样子的一个国王来牺牲，这个就是一个为道，为求佛道，来牺牲，这样子的牺牲精神呢，将来是可以得佛成佛的，所以这个也是算释迦牟尼佛的这个前身。
And so everyone was moved by the king's sacrifice in order to save all living beings and in order to attain the Buddha's way. He was willing to sacrifice himself. And at this time, Lord Shaka and the heavenly being Vishvakarma returned to their original forms. And so because this was very rare in how the king did not mind to sacrifice his life for the sake of saving living beings and for the sake of obtaining the Buddha's way. In the end, he will become a Buddha. And this is one of the previous lives of Shakyamuni Buddha.
所以我们还有一点时间，我想也再讲一个我们的这个仙公上人呢，他在讲这个大势至菩萨念佛圆通章的时候呢，讲一个故事，就是不是老和尚的这个故事。
Okay, so because there's a little time left, Dharma Master wants to tell another story of how when Venerable Master was explaining the chapter on Great Straying Bodhisattva's perfect penetration of mindfulness of the Buddha's name, he also shared a story about this monk called Not an Old Monk.
这个是在大仙寺，在大陆大仙寺。那这个老和尚呢，他就是开禅，不是老和尚。他这个老和尚是谁呢？就是开禅，不是老和尚。因为这个老和尚呢，他已经80多岁，身体非常健康，但是他手还是非常有力量，他的所以给他的这个 印象里面呢，就给他起了一个不是老和尚。
And so this story took place in Daxianshi Monastery of the great heavenly deity. And so this monk, even though he was in his 80s, but he was still very healthy and very strong. And so he was known as not an old monk. And he goes by the name of 开藏不是老和尚. That means opening the charm, but not an old monk.
这位老和尚呢，他很有大智慧，然后辩才也非常好，也喜欢，在讲这个禅机呀，他讲了这个偈颂呢，他说，水流平地本无声，地有高低而有声，大道无言周法界，因贪嗔痴而有生。这个是他讲的，就这个意思就是说，其实流水啦，本来都是在平地呢，没有什么声音，然后地因为有高低呢，变成才有声，然后大道本来是没有什么言语的，然后呢，因为就是人啊有贪嗔痴呢，才会有这个纷争的。
Okay, so this monk was he had great wisdom and he had great eloquence, and so he liked to engage in witty charm banter. And so he spoke a verse that says, the water flows to the level ground, originally has no sound. The ground with its high and low points gives up sound. The great way is wordless, pervading the Dharma realm without bound. Due to greed, anger, and delusion, fighting then abounds. And so it says that when the water flows, because it's level, it does not give up sound. But because there's a high and low points in the ground, then the ground resounds. And so likewise, the great way is originally worthless without wording. But because of greed, hatred, and stupidity, then fighting comes forth and it manifests.
所以呢，他讲了这个偈颂以后呢，然后呢，他这仙公上人就讲说，这个不是你讲的，这个我早就知道了，我念给你听听，你是在我这边学的，他故意跟他这样子来缓跟讲他，然后呢，他就真的念给他听。他还觉得很惊奇的样子，你早就会了，这样子。
And so after this monk recited the verse, Venerable Master said, "Oh, this is not your verse. I already know it. I already know this verse. You learned this verse from me. I will recite it for you." And so Venerable Master Hall recited the verse to this for this monk.
所以呢，像这样子，其实两个人呢都非常，我想非常的契机啦，两个人非常志同道合，然后他仙公上呢也看出他非常有智慧，所以呢，他们两个人谈话就很多了，然后呢，他仙公上呢，因为他去到那个大仙寺那里嘛。他临走的时候呢，他故意坐在这个老和尚的这个椅子上，然后也在他床上坐一坐。我们的圣公上人讲说，我不走了，你换你走，你赶快走，你不能在这里住。
And so the two, our master, the Venerable Master and this monk, they were very harmonious in spirit, like kindred spirits. Their mind was very in harmony, and so they talked a lot. After a while, Venerable Master would sit on the monk's chair, and then he sat on the monk's bed. And so he said, I won't leave now. It's your turn. You leave.
所以呢，他就说他不给他住那里，然后这个老和尚就说，那我可以住在外边啊。圣公上人说，外面也不准住，所以他就觉得很好玩，他走了进来3次，又出去3次，然后圣公上人他这样子，他讲，我就喜欢这里，你这个茅棚是世界上第一的，这个走进来3次，这个是圣公上人了，他走进来又走出去3次，所以圣公上人讲啊，他说你这个我是非常喜欢这个茅棚，是世界上第一的，而且不单单世界第一呢，天上也没有。所以这一回呢，我是要定了这个茅棚，你赶快走好了。
And Venerable Master said, I won't let you live here. That means I won't let you stay here in this place. You leave. And then the monk said, then I go outside. And the Venerable Master said, no, you still cannot live here. And so Venerable Master said, I like this hut of yours. It's the foremost one in the world. You cannot find anything like this in the world. Not only is this the #1 hut in the world, you cannot find it even in the heavens. And so the Venerable Master went in 3 times and went out 3 times. And he said that he wanted the monk's hut. He liked the monk's hut and wanted it.
所以呢，圣公上人要签他的单，就是不给他住这里，然后他也不走，因为这个是他的地方嘛，所以最后圣公上人他走了，然后圣公上人说啊，我下一次回来了，我就把你的这个小茅棚呢烧了，我看你住在什么地方。
And so Venerable Master liked the monk's hut and did not want him to stay there anymore. But of course, it was his hut, so the monk stayed there. And so in the end, the Venerable Master left. But he said, next time I come back, I burn down your hut.
所以呢，算今天他们这个是算吵了一架，当然这个是是互相在那里也对方啊，所以他先公上人呢，他没有撵走这个老和尚，他本来是要把他撵去美国的，他想把他撵来美国这边，所以他说你赶快去美国去，不要住这里。所以这个是一个跟大家讲这个一个小故事啊，这个神功上人呢，他是知道这个道人啊，非常慈悲，他把这个事情分享给大家，所以也是今天的时间也差不多了，我们就用这样子来解释神功上人也是讲说我们。就用一点点的时间来报告这样子的一个事情经过。
Okay. So they have this great exchange between them, the Venerable Master and the monk. They had a great banter. And so in the end, the Venerable Master was not able to ask the monk to leave at all. He wanted to push the monk to leave and come all the way to America, but he couldn't. And so the Venerable Master knew that the monk was a great cultivator. That is the reason why, out of compassion, he shared this story about the monk. And so time is up, so we stop here now with this short story that we have just shared.
他们你可以看到下面有没有什么问题？没有问题，我们要做今天的回向功德。
没有问题，法师。
没有哈。
没有。
好。
There seems to be no questions in the chat box, so we will dedicate merit now.
好，我们今天的这个 讲经的功德，我们还是来做我们的中文回向，就是说我们每天中午的这个阿弥陀念佛的回向，yeah.
So with the merit of today's sutra lecture, we would transfer in Chinese. That is the verse that we chant in the afternoon Buddha recitation, and the verse will be in Chinese.
好，我们大家请合掌了，也希望说我们的功德回向给所有法界众生都能够离苦得乐，也往生者就去阿弥陀佛那里修行成佛。
Please put your palms together, and we dedicate merit to all living beings of the Dharma realm. May all beings live suffering and attain bliss, and may those who pass away will be reborn in the pure land of ultimate bliss, and there cultivate and become Buddhas.
好，天生喜欢净土中就平莲花为父母花，开见佛无生不退菩萨为伴侣是方三世一切佛一切菩萨摩诃萨摩诃般若波罗蜜。Okay, very good. 我们就地礼佛三拜，3 bow to the Buddha. 顶礼老和尚。OK， 阿弥陀佛，我们的这个今天的无量寿经的讲法就到这里，祝大家平安吉祥快乐，阿弥陀佛。
So Amitabha, now we conclude tonight's sutra lecture on the Infinite Life Sutra. Dharma Master wishes everyone peace, auspiciousness, and joy. Amitabha.
好 ，OK， 我们也感谢 Phil 的Dharma Request， 还有果心 Tam 的翻译，还有那个Log 的这个 Internet 来做连接，网络。好，阿弥陀佛，感恩他们，也感恩大家一起来共修佛说无量寿经，也非常难得的，也好。我们明天礼拜五应该是没有念佛，因为我们要听十法师讲法。
Dharma Master expresses appreciation for layman Phil for the Dharma request, the translator for translating, and Log for the tech support with regards to the internet, and also everyone for coming to study together the Infinite Life Sutra. It is a very rare chance. And tomorrow there will be no afternoon Buddha recitation because Dharma Master Shore will have a lecture during the 12:30 hour. And I also want to say if I have translated inaccurately or missed any part, please kindly forgive me.